Hello and welcome to another edition of Exotic Gardening UK, Yorkshire Kris Weekly. I'm standing halfway down the garden underneath the archway that was put up a couple of years ago and planted up in the last couple of years as well. And we've got two climbers or scramblers either side and they're in flower now. So on this side we've got the chocolate vine, which is Akebia, and this has purplish flowers, and there's also a white version which I'm growing on the other side, which has not got as big yet, it's not as established, and it's not really doing much in the way of flower, but that's the white one on that side. But what I do have in flower on this side is this wonderful potato relative. This is a Solanium, very hardy. Like tomato leaves and potato leaves, they're poisonous as well, but it doesn't really matter because I'm not going to eat these. And these have got large bunches of purple flowers with very vivid yellow centres. And this is a scrambler, so it sort of makes its way up this archway. I do clip it back quite a lot because it does grow very vigorously. And it's a nice contrast to the Akebias with the nice scent. They have the chocolate, it's called a chocolate vine because it does have that sort of musky, chocolatey smell as well, especially on an evening. And then the other climber that's growing on here, which is evergreen, is a passion flower, just a common garden purple passion flower, which is not flowering yet, but that will follow on from the chocolate vine flowers. And then later on in the year, if it's a good year of pollination, the chocolate vine will have sort of large, unusual fruits, and potentially we might get some on the passion flower as well. So the weather today is gorgeous and sunny, but it has been rainy for the last few days, which is great because the garden is so dry because we've had hardly any rain all year. And I think January had less than half its annual monthly rainfall in January, and it's just been dry since. So it's great to have some rain the last few days. It's really topped up the pond and it's soaked into the ground everywhere. So it means that the plants can access water, and it also means the weeds can as well, so there's lots of weeding to be done. Anyway, coming up in the rest of today's episode. Now that the chances of frost have probably gone, or very unlikely, I'm going to remove the straw from all my tree ferns. You notice on this one's got greenish leaves, but the cold 6 frosts in a row we had the week before last has bronzed some of these leaves. But in the centre, I've been watering these with my little water sprinklers, which are in the centre of each of these. So if I just remove the straw, hopefully what we'll find is this year's Celosia is about to emerge. So if we just have a look in here, remove all the leaves, quite a few wood lice as well. That's a sprinkler over there that's been watering. And if we look in the centre, there we can see we have a big group of knuckles in there that will open up into this year's fronds, and if we just remove a bit of the fluff, you can see they're nice and green, they've not been frosted. It's quite open, this crown, so they'll open up over the next sort of 6 weeks or so and produce this year's fronds. And then the dead leaves I will completely removed, but as these are mainly green, I'll keep them as they are until they brown off, because they are helping photosynthesize and give energy to the tree fern. So I'm just going to go around to the rest of them and do the same thing. Some tree ferns are further on than others, so this one that's more established, you can see all the knuckles are unfurling already, and we've got one that's, you know, quite far on, and these will quickly come out over the next week or two. Now these are my zinnia seedlings that look a little bit leggy, and a little bit pale green. That could be the compost not being very good. And these don't like root disturbance, so they've been put into these individual cells, but they do need potting on now. So I'm going to pot them up into much bigger cells before planting out at the end of May. So I'm going to use the same sort of mix, sort of multi-purpose compost, and then just pot them up and give them a water. Now if we just look in the propagator, we can see that the ornamental gourds in the far distance have all germinated and looking healthy. And then most of the ricinus have also germinated with their big first initial leaves. So they're doing well, and they'll stay in here until they've grown a bit stronger. And the Solanium or coleus cuttings, little plugs, they've only been here 10 days now, and they have really come on well. So I'll bring these out of the propagator, and back into the propagator will go the zinnias, just to establish a bit quicker and root into the new compost. Now here you can see that the Celosia seeds have germinated very well, and I've sown them far too thickly for this seed tray because they've germinated like cress. So I'm going to separate these and put them into individual little cells like this, so they've got far more room for the roots to establish. It will check their growth a little bit because they have been oversown here, but thinning them out, the process of basically getting a thick load of seeds and thin them into individual cells and give them more space, will allow them to establish before planting out in May or early June. So the cannas that I sowed 3 weeks ago, I think it is now, have made good little seedling plants, and these need potting up in their own individual pots now, again with multi-purpose compost. And now the cannas are in their own pots, about, I think these are 9cm pots, and they'll stay there until planted out or given away later in the year. So I'm growing these dwarf French beans, and this is a type called polka. And if we look at the seeds, they're just creamy white. And these were very cheap, just from Wilkinson's, and I planted them individually into pots over there. And I've also done the same with some runner bean seeds. So this is runner bean white Emergo. But these seeds are different from normal runner bean seeds because they're completely creamy white, whereas normally they're pinkish red with some light veins on them. And I've planted them in toilet roll tubes and some individual deeper cells as well, so we'll see how they get on. And back in the propagator I've also planted my sweet corn, which I think this one's called Incredible F1. Again, cheap seeds from Wilco for about £1.25 I think they were. They need a bit of bottom heat to get them going, so that's why they're in the propagator. So a plant I've not talked about for a very long time is the Brugmansias, and these were left completely dormant over winter, pretty much dried off. There was still a little bit of dampness in the compost, but hardly any, weren't really watered over winter at all. And they were cut back hard last autumn, if you remember, and now it's spring and it's warmed up. You can see the new leaves emerging from the end of the stems and further down as well. So they'll be nicely rooted in here, and these will be brought out in a few weeks' time and then planted out in the garden. So the frosts we had a couple of weeks ago were actually quite bad, because even on very hardy plants like the common or garden ivy, it blackened all the new foliage and killed all the new leaves like we have on this one here. This does show some late frosts on fresh growth. Doesn't matter if it's a hardy or not hardy plant, it can kill it very easily. So at this time of year, a lot of the palm trees and other plants are not looking at their best. They've lost the deep green they had in summer and autumn, and they've got a bit of a paler green on the whole, and even when the leaves have unfurled a bit too early, a bit yellow as well. So we need to start thinking about feeding the plants, and especially to green up the leaves of palm trees. And a quick and easy way to do that is to use a seaweed feed. And this one here, this is seaweed with sequestered iron. So this will help green up these plants, and it's really good, especially if your soil's slightly alkaline, help green up plants that don't like alkaline conditions. And bootias, to be honest, like this one here, prefers slightly acidic soil. And you can water this in, follow the instructions and drench the plants, or what I like to do is just get a spray bottle and basically give a foliar feed, which basically means spraying all the leaves so they're nicely wetted. And this is really fast acting, so the micronutrients in here, in the seaweed, and the iron will absorb directly through the leaves and give the nutrients that the plant needs and help green it up a bit quicker. So I'm going to go around with the rest of my palms, give them a good spray of this, and it's also worth thinking about giving them a good mulch and feed at the base as well, with either well-rotted manure, compost or anything like that, chicken manure, giving the extra proper bulky nutrients, whereas the seaweed is basically like your top up. It's like your vitamin tablets basically, rather than your proper food if you were comparing it to humans. So let's continue giving these a spray. There's quite a lot to spray in this garden, so better get cracking. Now the areas around the pond are really infested with loads of weeds. There's a nice Trachycarpus princeps in the middle of this part of the bed. As you can see, it's completely surrounded by dandelions, grass, periwinkle. So I need to clear all these awful weeds right around the pond area, and so there's space for some nice, lovely plants. Well, that's that part of the garden nicely weeded, so you can clearly see the Trachycarpus princeps in the middle. A nice bit of ground to the right that I can plant up, and to the left got the big yucca, and in between the yucca and the Trachycarpus palm you've got the creeping New Zealand native, which can also be used as a climber twiner, and it even can be used as topiary. It's a really interesting evergreen plant with small leaves, a bit like ivy, but not quite as invasive, and this is going to give ground cover in this area, and we'll get towards the pond eventually. So now it's time to plant up on the right hand side. Now you may remember from last week I took cuttings of this Aloe striatula that was overhanging one of the paths, and now after a week the base is calloused over, which is really important in succulents when you're taking cuttings. So I'm just going to remove the lower leaves here, starting from the base, just pulling them back just until I've got enough stem that I'm going to put in the ground. So I'm going to probably go to about here, and then I'll plant that part in the ground, leaving all this above ground, and this is going to go along with the other cuttings that I took around the top of the pond on the hill where it's very dry and in full sun. And now the area's been cleared, and I've planted Euphorbium Platts Black at the bottom right, and behind that I've planted the Aloe striatula cuttings that I took last week. So I've got 3 of them planted behind, and then behind that, which you can't see, just before those plugs, is a Miscanthus giganteus grass that will grow up soon and cover that area. And although it's been raining the last few days, the ground is absolutely bone dry when I dug those in, so I'm going to give it a real good soak in the Euphorbium and the aloes as well.